Ben, thanks so much for joining me on the Slice of Finance podcast. How are you today?
Hey, Jared, great to be here. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Really excited to chat with you, especially because I spoke with your colleague Daniel at Money 2020. He got me fired up about it, and now I'm like, all right, now I get to talk about Ben and learn some from Ben. So first off, since I didn't record that conversation with Daniel, it was just getting to know each other. If you could tell our audience what April does, why you decided to start it, I think that'd be a good start to the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, we must be doing something right if we're getting people fired up about tax. Here at April, we embed tax inside of financial platforms to help money managers and their clients make the best financial decisions and enable the best possible financial futures for themselves. And when you look at the American tax code, I think Elon Musk tweeted recently that it's grown year over year. It almost looks steeper than Moore's law in terms of like we call it the doubling of the tax code every couple of years. And it's really astronomical. And I think there's different takes on why this has happened and how it's happened. Our economy is growing. The types of technologies that we have, the environment are all changing. And it's gotten challenging for the American taxpayer, small businesses, and also large corporations to know how to handle those situations and use the tax code to our advantage. What we have in the United States is much more than just a tax code, right? Taxation could be pretty simple. It could just be a flat tax or even a graduated rate. What we really have in the United States is really a social contract. It's a fabric of all of our incentive programs, how we take care of the sick and old, how we deal with disabilities, how we incentivize retirement. All of those things manifest themselves in the system. And what it means is if you're, just an everyday person living their life, trying to build a better future for yourself and your family, it's really difficult to leverage that law and that code in a way that best benefits you. And that doesn't mean that the law and the code is not set up so that it can benefit you. It just means that it's difficult. And the types of technologies that we have are 30 to 40 years old, the Intuits of the world. They were built in siloed, retrospective, reactive manner where tax is not part of the everyday decision making. And so what we've done at April is we've rebuilt the tax engine. We're the first company to do that in 15 years, to have a fully national capability across the entire country. We've done it on AI, where we've 20x'd our coding capacity against the industry norm. And we're actually able to embed the application inside of a payroll app like Gusto or a banking app like Chime, where a user can track their refund in real time. They can see their position. They can what if scenario generate what's going on with them at that moment in time. And then the year-end filing is actually much easier because we already have the data. We can pre-fill it. We can drive down the cost and the time that it takes the average person to do it. And we can leverage the information that they've fed into this platform to actually give them insights inside of their banking or payroll or wealth application to generate better financial outcomes.
I like to always say, Ben, the best businesses seem obvious in what you're doing. It doesn't seem easy, right? Like it can be obvious, but not be easy to implement. And that's what you have here, because it makes total sense for employees to be able to track in real time. That is a big worry for people in terms of what do they get like to make their financial decisions too, right? Many people, where am I going to be before tax time comes around, which can be a very scary time for many people. I agree with you that the current softwares out there are pretty outdated. I think and then I think it was last year the government tried to say they were going to they were working, or maybe they did release it, something on their own. We know that probably is not going to be like, is it going to be better than than what Intuit has at that point, right? No. Would it ever be better than anything you're doing? No. So I think what an opportunity. Let's talk about the AI piece, since this is something that you can't go, what's it called? You can't have a podcast nowadays. You can't get into a conversation with someone without mentioning that. So you did mention it was helping you, I think, build out your code base even faster. How are you leveraging AI today?
Yeah, look, when we approach this problem, you mentioned Daniel, my partner. Daniel was the CTO of Waze, I think one of the most prolific applied data scientists in the market out there, helped build a lot of the, Google Cloud AI infrastructure before anybody was really cared about this. And when we looked at this problem 4 years ago, we said this is kind of like the Manhattan Project of financial services. We know it needs to be done. We can't fail because there's too much at stake. But on the other hand, this, to your point, this isn't really the thing that most entrepreneurs are signing up to do. It's really difficult. You've got to deal with federal and state jurisdictions. We're embedding this inside of other people's applications. So you've got data security and performance and all these other things that you've got to be able to be really performant in. And so it's not an easy challenge. It wasn't easy to do. And we looked at the tax law and said, look, by doing this the old way, this is just going to take too much time and money. It's going to suck up the resourcing. So we're not going to be able to allocate it to building all the functionality that's actually going to deliver the value, because the engine is a precursor to be able to actually deliver the value. And we looked at it and we said, look, we don't think we can totally automate this. And it's too important. It needs human review. And so we pioneered something called collaborative AI. Now, I think these are pretty widely known as just co-pilots probably in the engineering market. And we said, what if we could take some of this code, this law, right? Because it comes out as congressional legislation from the federal and state bodies. What you want is an executable at the other end of that. And we said, what if we developed a pipeline and a process where we could start there and speed that up through a bunch of accelerants? And so we've deployed AI throughout that process. And that's what's allowed us to 20x our process of basically starting with that legislation and getting to an actual executable that can be human reviewed and ultimately go through a federal and state testing process.
Now, Ben, when you think about kind of staying on the AI questions, we talk about adapting to LLMs. How have you incorporated? Is that kind of along the same lines of what we were just talking about? But when you're looking at the problems you have to solve, how do you decide the parts where AI is going to increment, help you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I guess it's more of a. Let me change the question there. How do you balance AI with human expertise? Is really the question I'm going with.
Yeah. So there's a few things. I mean, we LLMs are part of the process. They're not the only part of the process. There's a lot of proprietary work that we do, and there's other tooling that we work as well. It's part of our secret sauce. I can't give you the whole 9 yards of how it works. But what I will say is two things. First of all, across this procedure, there are different tools and applications that are better at performing different types of activities depending where you are at the step. And so just like any process, you want to look and have a fit for purpose capability, whether that's something externally or something we built homegrown or a human. And so it's really decomposing any activity that you want to do and figuring out both from a cost trade-off, what's going to be expensive versus less expensive, speed, and then what's going to deliver a high level of accuracy. And so actually for us, some of what we find is some of the use cases the AI just can't handle yet, and we know we have to kick it out to a person. And so we've kind of also had approach of least complexity, where we've started with the lower complex tasks and have been working our way up to the more complex tasks. And actually helping the AI figure out what it can't do is almost as important, because it makes the human much, much more effective. And so when you're thinking about these systems, a lot of it is okay, can this be automated? But it's also about what should be automated. If the automation doesn't work and it fails, how do you handle that error or that edge case? And because otherwise you end up automating one task, but spending 5x the amount of time chasing something else. It doesn't really work out. And I think the analogy that I like to give people is AI is really like the cloud, right? Just saying something's on the cloud doesn't make it a better application or a faster application. It gives you the potential to deliver things at a much higher rate than you could have in the past. But that ultimately, some teams will do a great job of that, and some teams won't.
Let me just say, Ben, thanks for being April 2 and not April AI, like every single company I see. You know what's funny? Have we ever seen, though, a time, think back over the last 30 years, where maybe some of the blockchain stuff, but where people's company name, even they put in the buzzword into the name itself?
I think it has happened before. I grew up in the New York ecosystem. I started my company when I was 20. My first company, I was in the first WeWork. I was parallel tracking NYU, and at that time, the cloud and mobile were the hot thing, and people were naming. No one remembers these companies, because what company sort of succeeded because they delivered a cloud service of something? I mean, there were many cloud enablers and cloud service companies, just like there's going to be many AI services companies and AI enablers. So I'm putting those kind of in a separate category, but an actual service that you could deliver before AI and with AI, the buyer and the user does not know the difference. And I don't think that they should care. And, there was chat app. We've been delivering automated chat in our app since we started the company, and it worked really well. And now it works better because of AI, and our users are happier because of it. But I don't think telling the user this is an AI service is really helpful or relevant.
I agree with you. Yeah, and eventually those companies that just set out to do that, I mean, they probably don't last as long, right? Because they're focusing on just the buzz around something versus you're focusing on building a sustainable platform that, stands the test of time. On that note, what I did want to ask you is, so how do you ensure what you're doing contributes to long-term financial well-being rather than just the short-term gains?
Look, I think that that's a trade-off that any company and, especially startups struggle with because you've always got, short-term milestones that you've got to hit for your partners, your investors, your employee base, and then you have the long-term vision of, what you're chasing. And in April, our vision, if we manifest this, to real success, is that any time you're going to transact, you understand the tax impact. Whether that's okay, I think I want to put more money away for my child in a college savings account. What's the cost trade-off of doing that versus a non-tax advantaged account? Or it's just literally knowing what is my refund going to be because I need that money to pay a medical bill. We think every American should have the ability that both an individual, a household, and a business should have the totality of that tax code right at their fingertips. And if we play that out, that's embedded in every payroll, every bank, every wealth management system, e-commerce platforms, vertical SaaS. The way we've gone to market is, we've started with the digital banking space, and we were focused, on helping reduce the time and cost it took to process these returns. So we got, the national average is a few hours to do your taxes. We brought this down, to 30 to 40 minutes. National average is, a couple $100 or at least $80 in DIY. We, with our service, many of our partners are able to offer that for free or, conditionally free if you have a certain account balance or something like that at the institution. So I think we've been able to show that sort of in the short term, we can drive, a significant value both to our client base, our partners that offer our solution, right? Because we're a B2B2C company. You can't go to getapril.com and get this directly. You have to go to a bank or a partner that we work with. And I think we've also shown, we've had an NPS of about 60 last year, doing thousands of returns, and I think shows that this is something that's here to stay and has a functional need in the marketplace.
Then when you just mentioned you have to go to one of these partners, so talk me through someone wants to work with you. Like, what does that process look like?
Yeah, you're saying as a financial institution?
Yeah, let's take it from. I mean, I'd like to kind of see from like the different stakeholders, if you don't mind, because I think our audience would be really interested. So, well, let's start with financial institutions. So, let's say they want to work with you. What does that look like? And kind of go down the list, I guess.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, our two main stakeholders are the financial partner, the financial institution, and then the taxpayer or the end user, right? So if you're a financial institution, this is going to look a lot like your classic enterprise B2B sale. Someone comes in through the website, or we get connected. They respond to some of our marketing communication, and they start up a conversation, with one of our representatives, and we do some fact finding to understand, what is their digital platform like? What are their goals as a company? What are the other capabilities they have? Who are the end users that they serve? Because if you're a small business or you're, serving, high net worth clients, that conversation is going to look very different. And so we do kind of like an intake and a playback for the client, basically understanding this is who they are and their objectives and how they're thinking about, the solution set. And then, there's usually like a business case build that will go on, and you've got to go through pricing and procurement and due diligence, and then eventually there's like a purchase and a partnership that looks much like buying any other piece of software. Where we really differ is that we're actually helping the partner stand up a capability. So even though we own many of the software, it's API first, but much of it is white labeled or owned by the organization. They need to put marketing, they need to put legal and compliance, they need to put product and engineering, which usually takes for anywhere from a couple weeks to a quarter to get stood up. They need to really own that capability. And so then we've got to help them, onboard and put forward, a roadmap to be able to deliver that, to market. Once they deliver that, then their client set can take advantage of that. And that's going to look pretty different. I think the thing about tax is that it's so personal. Like if you're someone that relies on that refund to pay your bills or to fund holiday shopping, you want to know what that number is, and you're going to be there as soon as the IRS opens waiting in line. And so the way that taxpayer and that client set is going to experience the product is a little bit different, or quite a bit different actually, than someone that maybe has like a small business platform, maybe helping, a certain kind of, maybe a business in a box for barbershops. I'm making something up here, but that would look, very different because those clients are going to have more complexity. those taxpayers typically file a little bit later, and they're less worried about the refund and more worried about figuring out what are they going to owe and are they putting enough money aside for it. And so that dichotomy, tends to differentiate, how this service tends to manifest itself.
It's super interesting, Ben. Thank you for sharing more context around that too. One or two more things before we wrap up here. I do want to mention this because I know this is top of mind with a lot of people. I personally think it's going to be very likely that we're already hearing this, right? With the was it the DOGE? They're going to go after government programs, right? They're going to make them more efficient. I can imagine IRS is going to be a big one on their list. I don't think this negatively impacts you at all. I think it actually positively impacts you, to be honest with you. But what's top of mind when you think about, let's say that the IRS gets, some budget? How does that impact April? Again, I think it's positive more than anything because of what you're doing, but I would love to hear your take.
Yeah, look, I mean, look, we're politically neutral as a company, so we follow the will of the American people first and foremost, and what the will of the American people exact Congress to do, we will do our best to help meet their needs and help our clients meet their needs and respond to whatever environment there may be. That being said, look, there have been a lot of talk about, and look, we're fine. The government wants to have their own solution or whatever. I think the biggest thing this market needs is more competition. I think anytime you've got, only a few providers that have been around for 30 years and are sitting on monopolies, that spells disaster for the American public and for consumers. So what we need is more competition. We need free and fair competition. So, government needs to compete this, and compete fairly, with the open marketplace. But beyond that, I think we see as a provider that the real deficit here is the technology deficit. There has been a huge overinvestment in all sorts of things, and the technology is suffering. And that's not the technology that the end consumer is experiencing. That's the technology that we rely on as the providers of this software. There's a real opportunity to help government not necessarily decrease funding, but maybe reallocate funding in ways that would lead to better, faster, cheaper services for all Americans and businesses. And that's something that we would love to see happen, of course.
I love it. Ben, I want to thank you so much for joining me here today, sharing some more about April. Daniel got me fired up about it. You got me fired up about it. Everyone else, you should be fired up about it. Go check out what Ben, Daniel, and the rest of the team are doing. But wishing you the best of luck, and thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thanks for having me, Jared. Appreciate it.